The obsidian chamber of the Vazrathi High Council gleamed under the pale purple light of the ceremonial orbs. 9 Supreme Council members sat in perfect formation, their scaled skin reflecting different hues as they shifted in their elevated seats. Commander Krosoth stood at attention in the center of the chamber, his posture rigid and his breathing controlled. The weight of the Empire's honor rested on his shoulders. "Commander!" Supreme Counselor Morvala's voice echoed through the chamber, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with each syllable. "You have been summoned to explain the inexcusable failure of our stealth reconnaissance mission to the human world." Krosoth's inner eyelids flickered nervously, but his outer expression remained stoic. "Honored counselors, I present myself for judgment and stand ready to accept the consequences of my command decisions." 3 of our most advanced cloaking vessels, Counselor Duvok hissed, his throat sac inflating with anger. Rendered inoperable by a primitive species barely 2 cycles into their interstellar development. Explain this humiliation. Krosoth activated the holographic display embedded in his wrist guard. A 3-dimensional representation of Earth appeared, rotating slowly above the polished floor. "Our intelligence on human defense capabilities was accurate. Honored ones. Their orbital detection systems are rudimentary, their weapons insufficient to penetrate our shielding." He paused, his crest flattening slightly in embarrassment. "What we failed to anticipate was their unpredictability." "Unpredictability," Counselor Vex growled, tail twitching with irritation. "You command the most technologically advanced scout fleet in 9 star systems, and you speak of unpredictability?" "Indeed, Counselor." Krosoth expanded the hologram, revealing 3 Vazrathi stealth cruisers in perfect formation entering Earth's atmosphere. Our vessels maintained perfect stealth parameters, absorbing all radar emissions, deflecting visual detection, operating within the counter-resonance wave that renders us completely invisible to their sensors. "Yet they detected you," Morvala stated, her claws clicking against the armrest of her council seat. "Not exactly, Supreme Counselor." Krosoth's secondary heart began beating faster as he reached the most embarrassing part of his report. "We were not detected. We were disabled." The hologram shifted, showing the interior of the lead ship. A Vazrathi navigator sat at the control panel, focused on the atmospheric entry sequence. Then, from somewhere off-screen, a human figure appeared, stumbling slightly, holding what appeared to be a small container. "What is this?" Counselor Mvala leaned forward, her ceremonial armor creaking with the movement. "A human infiltrated our lead vessel, Honored One." "Impossible!" The word echoed from multiple council members simultaneously. "Not an infiltration in the traditional sense," Krosoth clarified. "Our analysis suggests the human was a maintenance worker for their primitive orbital platform. While performing external repairs, the human became detached from their tethering system." The hologram continued. The human, apparently unaware of the alien vessel, drifted through the bridge, a look of panic visible even through the protective helmet. In the human's hand was a container, which Krosoth's analysis identified with a small data tag. "A beverage container," Counselor Duvok read, his voice dripping with incredulity. "Coffee. Yes, Counselor. When our ship adjusted course to avoid collision with orbital debris, the human was drawn into our gravitational field. Upon entry, the artificial gravity activated, and the human fell." The hologram showed the scene with painful clarity. The human tumbling forward, the container opening, and the dark liquid arcing through the air to splash directly onto the primary navigation console. Sparks erupted immediately, followed by a cascade of system failures. The stealth field collapsed, and the ships became visible to Earth's sensors. "The liquid created a disruption in the counter-resonance wave generator," Krosoth explained, his voice tight with professional embarrassment. "All 3 vessels were affected due to their synchronized field harmonics." The council chamber fell silent. 9 pairs of reptilian eyes stared at Krosoth, expressions ranging from disbelief to barely contained rage. Coffee. Supreme Counselor Morvala finally spoke, testing the alien word on her forked tongue. A primitive stimulant beverage disabled the pride of the Vazrathi fleet. The human was retrieved by their space agency before we could capture them for interrogation. Krosoth added, Our ships managed emergency landings in their oceanic regions and self-destructed as protocol dictates. No technology was compromised. Counselor Vex slammed his armored fist against his chair. This is unacceptable. The Empire has invested countless universal credits in this expansion initiative. We have studied the humans for half a cycle, determined their weaknesses, planned our first contact scenario to establish immediate dominance. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. And you tell us that coffee has delayed our grand design? We should reduce their world to dust, Counselor Zrith suggested, speaking for the first time. Their unpredictability makes them dangerous. Better to eliminate the threat entirely. Krosoth's crest rose slightly in alarm. If I may, honored ones, such action would be premature. The humans remain unaware of our true intentions. They believe the incident was merely an encounter with unidentified aircraft. Our mission parameters can still be achieved. Morvala's bioluminescent patterns shifted from angry red to a contemplative blue. What do you propose, Commander? Krosoth had prepared for this question during the 3-day journey back to Vazrathi space. A controlled first contact scenario, one that follows our ancient traditions while minimizing the risk of unexpected variables. Speak plainly, Duvok demanded. I propose the Kavlith Protocol, the ritual combat of champions. A murmur spread through the council chamber. The Kavlith Protocol was rarely invoked, a remnant of the Empire's more barbaric past, when disputes between stellar powers were resolved through ritualized combat rather than full-scale war. You wish to challenge the humans to a duel? Morvala's inner eyelids blinked rapidly, indicating surprise. Yes, Supreme Counselor. We send our greatest warrior to face theirs in single combat. When our champion emerges victorious, the humans will understand their place in the cosmic hierarchy. They will submit to Vazrathi authority without requiring a costly military campaign. And if our champion should fail, Counselor Vex challenged. Krosoth's posture stiffened. That is impossible, Honored One. We possess warriors bred for combat across 1,000 generations. The humans are soft, undisciplined creatures who rely on machines rather than personal strength. Victory is assured. The council members exchanged glances, communicating in the subtle language of crest movements and tail positions that outsiders could never hope to interpret. Who would you recommend as our champion? Morvala finally asked. Krosoth had anticipated this question as well. Grand Executor Gilarax, Supreme Counselor. The name sent a visible ripple through the council. Gilarax was legendary, even among the Vazrathi, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with reinforced bone structure and naturally armored skin. He had earned the title Blood Rinker after single-handedly defeating an entire squadron of Creel shock troops during the border disputes of the previous cycle. Gilarax has expressed interest in testing himself against new species. Krosoth continued. His combat prowess is unmatched, and his victory would send a clear message regarding Vazrathi superiority. Supreme Counselor Morvala considered the proposal, her claws tapping rhythmically against her armrest. Very well. Commander, the Council approves your strategy. You will contact the humans, issue the formal challenge according to the Kavlith Protocol, and oversee the combat. Grand Executor Gilarax will represent the Empire's strength. And when he is victorious, Counselor Vex added, you will immediately proceed with the subjugation plan. No more delays. Commander, the Empire's expansion will not be hindered by primitives with beverages. Krosoth bowed deeply, his crest flattened in submission. It shall be done, Honored Ones, for the glory of the Vazrathi. As he turned to leave, Morvala's voice stopped him. "Commander, understand this. Should you fail again, the consequences will be severe. The Council's patience is not infinite." "I understand, Supreme Counselor. I will not fail." The obsidian doors closed behind him with an ominous finality. Krosoth exhaled slowly, allowing his rigid posture to relax slightly. The mission was complex but clear. Contact the humans. Issue the challenge. Oversee Gilarax's inevitable victory. Begin the subjugation process. Simple, direct, honorable, just as the ancient texts prescribed. What could possibly go wrong? 3 days later, Commander Krosoth stood on the bridge of the Imperial Vazrathi vessel, Relentless Dominion, observing the blue-green planet through the view screen. Unlike the stealth vessels, this ship made no attempt to hide its presence. Its massive silhouette hung in Earth's orbit like a predator announcing its arrival. Communications established with the Human Leadership Council. Lieutenant Krav reported. They call it the United Nations Security Council. Primitive tribal structures, Krosoth muttered. Multiple leaders instead of a unified command. Inefficient. They appear agitated by our presence. Commander, their military forces are mobilizing, though their weapons pose no threat to our shields. As expected, Krosoth straightened his ceremonial armor. The gleaming black plates were etched with the history of his bloodline. 17 generations of service to the Empire. Prepare to transmit the formal challenge. Full sensory package. Yes, Commander. The communications array hummed as it calibrated to Earth's broadcasting frequencies. Krosoth took a moment to review the intelligence gathered on human physiology. Their hearing range was limited, their visual spectrum narrow. The translation matrix would need to compensate for these deficiencies. Connection established. Commander, you may begin. Krosoth raised his head, crest fully extended to display his rank and authority. People of Earth, I am Commander Krosoth of the Vazrathi Empire. Our civilization has observed your development for some time, and we have determined that you now qualify for formal contact under Imperial protocol. He paused, allowing the translation to catch up. The humans would be receiving his words in multiple languages simultaneously. Recent events have demonstrated your species' potential for interference with Imperial matters. This cannot be tolerated. However, the Empire is not without honor. We offer you the opportunity to prove your worth through the ancient ritual of Kavlith, the combat of champions. Krosoth gestured, and the holographic display activated, projecting the image of Grand Executor Gilarax in full battle regalia. The massive warrior stood motionless, his bioluminescent patterns glowing fierce crimson against his armored hide. This is Grand Executor Gilarax, the Empire's chosen champion. You will select your greatest warrior to face him in honorable combat. The location shall be the neutral territory you designate as Antarctica. The time, 3 of your planetary rotations from now. Another pause. The humans would need time to process this information, to understand the gravity of what was being offered. Should your champion prevail, the Vazrathi Empire will recognize humanity's sovereign status and establish diplomatic relations. Should your champion fall, as is inevitable, you will acknowledge Vazrathi authority and accept your place within our dominion. Krosoth's inner eyelids flickered in anticipation of their response. You have 6 of your hours to accept these terms. Refusal will be considered an act of hostility, and appropriate measures will be taken. Choose wisely, humans. The transmission ended. Krosoth turned to his second-in-command. Prepare Gilarax for descent. I want him acclimated to Earth's gravity and atmosphere before the combat. Yes, Commander. Lieutenant Krav hesitated. And if the humans refuse the challenge? Krosoth's secondary heart rate increased slightly at the thought. Then, we will have no choice but to demonstrate our power more directly. But they will accept. Their historical records show a species obsessed with challenges and competitions. Their primitive honor systems will compel them to agree. As you say, Commander. 5 hours and 43 minutes later, the response came. The humans had accepted the terms of the Kavlith Protocol. They would meet at the designated location with their chosen champion. Predictable, Krosoth remarked, reviewing the human transmission. Though they request that diplomatic representatives be allowed to accompany their warrior. A stalling tactic? Lieutenant Krav suggested. Perhaps. Or simply their bizarre insistence on collective decision-making. Krosoth considered for a moment. Allow it. A few additional witnesses to their humiliation will only reinforce the lesson. In the training chamber deep within the relentless Dominion, Grand Executor Gilarax methodically prepared for combat. His massive form moved with practiced precision through the ancient combat forms. Each movement perfectly controlled despite his intimidating size. Krosoth watched from the observation platform, admiring the warrior's discipline. Gilarax was a perfect specimen of Vazrathi genetic engineering, the culmination of centuries of selective breeding and biochemical enhancement. You honor me with this assignment, Commander. Gilarax's voice rumbled, deep and resonant. He did not pause in his exercises as he spoke. It has been too long since I faced a worthy opponent. I doubt the humans will provide much challenge. Grand Executor. Their physical capabilities are limited. No natural armor, minimal muscular density, fragile skeletal structures. Gilarax's tail swept in a perfect arc, stopping precisely 1 centimeter from the floor. Yet, they have survived. They have expanded beyond their world despite these limitations. There must be something worthy of study. Their adaptability, perhaps, Krosoth conceded. And their unpredictability. The incident with the beverage was unexpected. A low, grinding sound emerged from Gilarax's throat, the Vazrathi equivalent of laughter. Yes, I read your report. Coffee. A stimulant, correct? Perhaps I should sample some before the combat. That would be unwise. Grand Executor, human biochemistry differs significantly from our own. Their sustenance might be toxic to your enhanced systems. Gilarax transitioned to offensive forms, his claws extending to their full 15-centimeter length. I jest, Commander. I will face their champion with nothing but my natural abilities and the honor of 17 generations of combat breeding. The Empire is fortunate to have you, Grand Executor. Gilarax paused, his bioluminescent patterns shifting to a contemplative blue. Tell me, Commander, what do we know of their champion? Have they selected a warrior of note? They have not yet disclosed that information, Krosoth admitted. Human communication methods are inefficient. They appear to be in extensive discussions regarding their selection. Good. Gilarax resumed his training, moving faster now, his claws whistling through the air. Let them deliberate. Let them search their entire world for a warrior who might stand against me. It will make their defeat all the more devastating when it comes. Krosoth bowed slightly and left the training chamber. As the door sealed behind him, he allowed himself a moment of doubt. The humans had proven unpredictable once before. What if they had some unexpected strategy, some technological advantage? No, he decided. The terms of the Kavlith Protocol were clear. No weapons beyond those naturally possessed by the combatants. No technological enhancements. Just warrior against warrior, strength against strength. And in that arena, no human could possibly match a Vazrathi champion. 3 days later, the relentless Dominion hovered above the frozen expanse of Antarctica. Below, a temporary structure had been erected on the ice, a simple dome capable of maintaining a temperate environment for the combat. The humans have arrived, Commander, Lieutenant Krav reported, studying the sensor readings. A small transport vessel approaches from the north. Krosoth narrowed his eyes at the image on the view screen. The human vessel was unlike any in their intelligence database. Small, crudely constructed, with what appeared to be colorful markings along its hull. "Magnify," he ordered. The image expanded. The markings resolved into words in the human's dominant language. "Party barge." "What is the significance of this designation?" Krosoth asked, puzzled. Lieutenant Krav consulted the database. "Unknown, Commander. Our linguistics matrix has no direct translation. The closest approximation suggests a vessel used for recreational gatherings." "They send a recreational vessel to a combat ritual?" Krosoth's crest flattened in confusion. "Scan for weapons, life forms." Scanning. No weapons detected beyond personal small arms, consistent with the security detail they requested permission for. "Life form readings are—" Krav paused, rechecking his instruments. "Unusual, Commander. I detect only a small number of humans aboard. Perhaps a dozen." "A dozen?" Krosoth's confusion deepened. "Where is their army? Their honor guard for their champion?" "Unknown, Commander. Perhaps this is merely an advance party." "Perhaps," but Krosoth felt uneasy. Nothing about this encounter was proceeding according to standard protocols. "Prepare our landing party. Gilarax and I will descend to the surface with a ceremonial guard of 8 warriors. Maintain battle readiness in case of treachery." "Yes, Commander." The Vazrathi shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced propulsion system allowing for a smooth, controlled landing beside the human structure. The airlock cycled, adjusting the internal environment to match Earth's atmospheric composition. Krosoth felt the slight increase in gravity. Earth's pull was approximately 1.1 times that of the Vazrathi homeworld. A minor inconvenience, nothing more. Grand Executor Gilarax rolled his massive shoulders, adapting instantly to the changed conditions. "Thin air," he commented. "High oxygen content, favorable for endurance combat. Remember the protocol. Grand Executor. The combat begins only after the formal exchange of declarations and the ceremonial signal. 3 horn blasts, as is tradition." "I have studied the ancient texts, Commander," Gilarax replied, his tone suggesting mild offense at the reminder. "I will bring honor to the Empire." The Vazrathi procession emerged from their shuttle, moving in perfect formation across the ice toward the human structure. The contrast could not have been more stark. The Vazrathi in gleaming ceremonial armor, moving with military precision, while the human vessel sat awkwardly on the ice, its garish colors an offense to Krosoth's aesthetic sensibilities. A small group of humans emerged from their vessel. Krosoth counted 7 individuals, most wearing what appeared to be formal attire, dark suits that did little to protect against the Antarctic cold. They huddled together, their breath visible in the frigid air. "Where is their champion?" Gilarax growled softly. "I see no warrior among them." Krosoth shared his confusion, but maintained his diplomatic composure as they approached the humans. One stepped forward, a female, based on their intelligence regarding human sexual dimorphism. She wore additional layers of clothing that seemed more practical for the environment. "Commander Krosoth," she greeted him in accented but understandable Vazrathi. "I am Dr. Yumi Takagi, Earth's diplomatic liaison for this encounter. We welcome you to neutral territory and thank you for adhering to the agreed-upon terms." Krosoth blinked in surprise at hearing his native language from a human mouth. Their adaptability was indeed remarkable. "Dr. Yumi Takagi," he responded, careful to use her full designation as human customs seemed to require. "I present Grand Executor Gilarax, champion of the Vazrathi Empire." Gilarax stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the human delegation. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed with anticipation, a bright crimson that signaled readiness for combat. Dr. Takagi showed no fear, though Krosoth noted an elevated heart rate in her biosignature. "Impressive. We are honored to meet such a distinguished warrior." "Where is your champion?" Gilarax demanded, his patience visibly waning. I have prepared for worthy combat. A strange expression crossed Dr. Takagi's face, what the intelligence briefings had identified as discomfort, or possibly embarrassment. Yes, about that. She glanced back at her colleagues, who seemed equally uncomfortable. There's been a slight miscommunication. Our champion is, still preparing. Preparing? Krosoth's crest rose in suspicion. The terms were clear. 3 planetary rotations. This location. Your acceptance was unconditional. And we are here, as agreed, Dr. Takagi assured him quickly. Our champion is aboard our vessel. He simply requires a few more minutes to complete his pre-combat rituals. Gilarax's tail twitched in irritation. More delays, Commander. I begin to question the human's honor in this matter. As do I. Grand Executor. Krosoth fixed Dr. Takagi with his most intimidating stare. All 3 eyelids retracted to display the full intensity of his gaze. You have exactly 10 of your minutes to present your champion, Dr. Yumi Takagi. Further delay will be considered a violation of the Kavlith Protocol. Understood, Commander. If you and your delegation would please enter the combat dome, we'll join you momentarily with our champion. She gestured toward the structure behind them. Krosoth considered refusing, but decided that maintaining the formality of the protocol was important. Very well, 10 minutes. The Vazrathi delegation entered the dome, finding it Spartan, but functional. A circular area had been cleared in the center, surrounded by simple seating. The temperature was maintained at a level comfortable for both species, a small courtesy that Krosoth noted with grudging approval. They stall for time, Gilarax muttered, pacing the perimeter of the combat circle. Perhaps their chosen warrior has lost courage. Perhaps, Krosoth agreed, though he suspected something else was at work. The humans had been too accepting of the challenge, too accommodating in the arrangements. It suggested either supreme confidence or desperate improvisation. 9 minutes and 37 seconds later, the human delegation entered the dome. They arranged themselves on one side of the circle, leaving the opposite seating for the Vazrathi. Dr. Takagi remained standing, apparently preparing to make a formal announcement. Vazrathi delegates, she began, her voice carrying well in the enclosed space. In accordance with the Kavlith Protocol, Earth presents its champion. She gestured toward the entrance, and a single human male stumbled into the dome. Krosoth stared in disbelief. The human was of average height and build for their species, perhaps 180 centimeters tall, with the muscular but unexceptional physique common to their military castes. He wore a uniform that Krosoth's database identified as belonging to the United States Marine Corps, though it was notably disheveled. Most disturbing was the human's demeanor. He seemed disoriented, his movements uncoordinated, his eyes unfocused. "What is this?" Gilarax demanded, rising to his full height. "You send a damaged specimen to face me? This is an insult to the Kavlith Protocol." The human male blinked several times, seeming to notice the Vazrathi for the first time. He swayed slightly on his feet, then offered what appeared to be a casual salute. "Staff Sergeant Jack Murphy, United States Marine Corps," he announced, his words slightly slurred. "Reporting as ordered, ma'am." This last comment was directed at Dr. Takagi, who winced visibly. "Is he injured?" Krosoth asked, genuinely confused. "We agreed to combat between warriors in their prime. If your champion is unwell—" "I'm fine," Staff Sergeant Murphy interrupted, waving dismissively. "Just a little. Tactical dehydration. I'll walk it off." Dr. Takagi cleared her throat. "Staff Sergeant Murphy is one of Earth's finest warriors. He has volunteered to represent humanity in this contest." Krosoth's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as he processed this information. Something was wrong. The human showed none of the preparation, none of the focus one would expect from a champion preparing for ritual combat. You expect us to believe this is your greatest warrior. Gilarax's bioluminescent patterns shifted to dark purple, a warning sign of growing rage. Not our greatest, Dr. Takagi admitted carefully. But certainly, representative of human capabilities. Staff Sergeant Murphy seemed oblivious to the tension. He was now examining the dome's structure with apparent fascination, occasionally mumbling something about weird-ass lizard people and should have stayed in San Diego. Krosoth pulled Dr. Takagi aside, lowering his voice. What game do you play? Human. This warrior is clearly in no condition for combat. He appears to be suffering from some form of neurological impairment. Dr. Takagi sighed, dropping her diplomatic facade slightly. Look, Commander, I'll be straight with you. Our actual military leadership is still debating the appropriate response to your unexpected arrival. Staff Sergeant Murphy was available and willing to participate while we buy time for our diplomats to arrange a more formal meeting. Buy time? Krosoth's crest flattened in anger. The Kavlith Protocol is not a delaying tactic. It is a sacred tradition dating back 17 generations. And we respect that, Dr. Takagi assured him quickly. But you must understand, humans have no similar tradition. We're improvising here. Improvising with a warrior who can barely stand upright, Krosoth gestured toward Murphy, who had now discovered a small container in his pocket and was examining its contents with disproportionate interest. He had a long night, Dr. Takagi admitted. There was a going-away party for one of his squad mates. We didn't exactly have time to let him sleep it off before your deadline expired. Krosoth struggled to comprehend what he was hearing. You sent an intoxicated warrior to a ritual combat that will determine your species' sovereignty. We sent what we had available, Dr. Takagi replied with surprising frankness. The instructions from my superiors were clear. Stall until the diplomats arrive. Don't start an interspecies war, and try to keep everyone alive. Staff Sergeant Murphy is helping with all three objectives. Krosoth was about to respond when Gilarax's impatient growl interrupted them. Enough whispered conspiracies. Commander, if this is their champion, let the combat begin. The outcome is merely formalized now. Looking at the swaying human and the massive, perfectly conditioned Vazrathi warrior, Krosoth could only agree. Whatever strategy the humans were attempting, it would fail spectacularly. Very well, he announced, returning to the center of the circle. In accordance with the Kavlith Protocol, I call upon both champions to enter the combat ring. Gilarax stepped forward, his movements fluid and powerful despite his size. Staff Sergeant Murphy had to be guided to his position by Dr. Takagi, who whispered something in his ear that finally seemed to focus his attention. Wait, I'm actually fighting that thing? Murphy asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I thought this was just a meet and greet. Dr. Takagi whispered something else, and Murphy's expression changed to one of grudging acceptance. Fine, fine. How hard can it be? I've wrestled drunk recon Marines before. Krosoth raised his ceremonial horn. The combat will proceed until one champion yields or is unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted, but not required for victory. He looked pointedly at Gilarax, silently communicating that a quick, non-lethal victory would be preferable for diplomatic reasons. Gilarax gave an almost imperceptible nod, understanding the unspoken command. He would subdue the human quickly, but leave him alive as a gesture of, not mercy, exactly, but practical politics. Champions, prepare yourselves, Krosoth announced. He raised the horn to his mouth and blew 3 sharp, clear notes. The combat had begun. Gilarax moved with startling speed for his size, covering the distance to the human in 2 powerful strides. His claws extended, reaching for a disabling but non-lethal grip on Murphy's shoulders. What happened next would be analyzed and debated in Vazrathi military academies for generations to come. Staff Sergeant Murphy, apparently distracted by something on the ceiling of the dome, took a step backward at precisely the moment Gilarax's claws would have connected. The Vazrathi warrior, his momentum carrying him forward, found himself grasping at empty air. Murphy, seemingly unaware of how close he had come to being seized by 3-inch talons, stumbled over his own feet. As he fell backward, he instinctively threw up his hands, one of which was holding a small metallic container. The container's contents, a clear liquid that Krosoth's olfactory sensors identified as containing high concentrations of ethanol, arced through the air in a perfect trajectory to splash directly into Gilarax's primary eyes. The Vazrathi champion roared in pain and surprise, his natural nictitating membranes slamming shut to protect his vision. Murphy, meanwhile, landed hard on his backside, blinking in confusion at the bellowing alien before him. "Whoa, did I do that?" he muttered, seemingly impressed with himself. Gilarax, temporarily blinded, but far from defeated, switched tactics. He extended his poison-barbed tail, sweeping it in a low arc, designed to knock the human's legs out from under him, a maneuver that had felled countless opponents in the combat arenas of the Empire. Murphy, who had just noticed that his bootlace was untied, dropped to one knee to fix it. The lethal tail swept harmlessly over his head. Krosoth watched in disbelief. The human wasn't fighting. He wasn't even defending himself in any recognizable way. He was just existing. And somehow, that was proving more effective than any combat strategy Krosoth had ever witnessed. Gilarax, his vision clearing, focused on the kneeling human. With a growl that vibrated the very air of the dome, he activated his sonic disruptor, a specialized organ in his throat that could produce sound waves capable of disorienting most species. Murphy, having finished with his bootlace, had become distracted by the bioluminescent patterns on Gilarax's skin, which were now pulsing with anger and frustration. "Cool light show," he commented, apparently oblivious to the sonic attack that should have left him incapacitated. "Why isn't he affected?" Krosoth whispered to Dr. Takagi, who was watching the proceedings with an expression that combined horror and fascination. "What?" she asked, wincing slightly from the sonic attack that was clearly affecting the human delegation. "The sonic disruptor," Krosoth clarified. "Your champion seems immune." Dr. Takagi glanced at Murphy, then back to Krosoth. "Oh, he probably can't hear it. Too many years on firing ranges without proper ear protection. Most Marines his age have significant hearing damage." Krosoth stared at her. "Your warriors deliberately damage their sensory organs?" "Not deliberately. It's more of an occupational hazard." Gilarax, growing increasingly frustrated, abandoned subtlety. He charged directly at Murphy, who had finally seemed to notice that he was supposed to be in combat. The Marine scrambled to his feet, swaying slightly, and attempted to take a defensive stance. It was a commendable effort, Krosoth noted, but far too late. Gilarax's massive form crashed into the human, sending him flying across the combat circle. Murphy landed hard, rolled several times, and somehow ended up on his feet, though he looked more surprised by this outcome than anyone. "Hey!" Murphy protested, his voice surprisingly steady given the impact he had just absorbed. "That was unnecessary roughness. 15-yard penalty." Gilarax paused, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar terminology. That hesitation gave Murphy just enough time to shake his head clear and take stock of his situation. "All right, lizard man," Murphy muttered, rolling his shoulders. "Let's dance." What followed was less a dance and more a chaotic series of near misses and improbable escapes. Gilarax, a warrior trained in 17 distinct combat disciplines, found himself unable to land a decisive blow on an opponent who moved with no discernible pattern or strategy. Murphy ducked when he should have dodged, stepped forward when any sane combatant would have retreated, and occasionally stopped to examine something interesting on the floor, forcing Gilarax to adjust his attacks mid-strike. 10 minutes into what should have been a 30-second victory. Gilarax was visibly tiring. His movements, once precise and efficient, had become increasingly desperate and wasteful of energy. Murphy, meanwhile, seemed to be sobering up, his reactions becoming more deliberate if no less unpredictable. "This is unprecedented," Krausoth murmured, unable to tear his eyes away from the spectacle. "The Grand Executor has never been challenged like this." Dr. Takagi nodded, looking equally astonished. "I've seen Staff Sergeant Murphy win bar fights before, but this is something else entirely." "Bar fights?" Krausoth questioned. "Informal combat rituals," she explained hastily. "Usually alcohol-induced." On the combat floor, Gilarax had managed to corner Murphy against the edge of the circle. The Vazrathi champion's bioluminescent patterns were pulsing rapidly, indicating exhaustion and growing desperation. Murphy, backed against the boundary line, simply grinned. "You're pretty good for a big guy," he commented, seemingly unaware of his precarious position. "Reminds me of wrestling my drill instructor at graduation. He was uglier, though. No offense." Gilarax, beyond understanding the human's words but recognizing the casual tone as an insult, roared and lunged forward with his remaining strength. Murphy, with reflexes that seemed to improve the longer the combat continued, sidestepped at the last possible moment. The Vazrathi warrior, unable to halt his momentum, crashed into the boundary markers and collapsed in an undignified heap. He attempted to rise, but managed only to lift himself to one knee before his strength failed him. The dome fell silent. The human delegation stared in shock. The Vazrathi guards looked to Krausoth for guidance, their postures radiating confusion and alarm. Staff Sergeant Murphy, apparently unaware that he had just accomplished the impossible, walked over to the kneeling Gilarax and extended his hand. "Good match, big guy. No hard feelings, right?" Gilarax stared at the offered hand, then at the human's face, his expression unreadable to anyone not versed in Vazrathi physiology. After a long moment, he reached out and clasped Murphy's forearm in the traditional warrior's acknowledgement. "The combat is concluded," Krausoth announced, his voice carefully controlled despite his inner turmoil. "Medical assistance for the Grand Executor." Two Vazrathi guards rushed forward to help Gilarax to his feet. The once proud warrior allowed himself to be supported, his bioluminescence now a dim blue of exhaustion, and, Krausoth was shocked to see, thoughtful contemplation. "According to the Kavlith protocol," Krausoth continued, each word feeling like a betrayal of everything he believed about Vazrathi superiority. "The human champion has prevailed. The Empire acknowledges humanity's sovereign status." Dr. Takagi stepped forward, her diplomatic facade firmly back in place. "The people of Earth appreciate the Vazrathi Empire's adherence to tradition and honor. We look forward to establishing formal diplomatic relations." Murphy, finally seeming to grasp the significance of what had just happened, straightened his disheveled uniform and attempted a more formal posture. "Happy to serve, ma'am. Though I still don't really know what I just did." "You represented humanity, Staff Sergeant," Dr. Takagi told him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Quite effectively, as it turns out." "Cool. Can I go back to the ship now? I really need some water and about 12 aspirin." "Soon," she promised, then turned back to Krausoth. "Commander, I believe we have much to discuss regarding our species' future relationship." Krausoth was barely listening. His mind was racing, analyzing what he had just witnessed. Gilarax, the pride of the Empire, defeated not by superior strength or skill, but by... what? Luck, unpredictability, the strange, chaotic nature that seemed to define humanity. "Commander?" Dr. Takagi prompted. Krausoth snapped back to the present moment. "Yes, discussions. Of course." He gestured to his guards to arrange seating for the delegations. "Though I must inform my superiors of this outcome." Understood. And as it happens, our diplomatic team has just arrived. She gestured toward the entrance, where a new group of humans was entering the dome. Unlike Murphy and the initial delegation, these humans moved with purpose and confidence, dressed in formal attire that marked them as officials of significance. Ambassador Wilson, Dr. Takagi greeted the lead human, an older male with silver hair. Your timing is impeccable. Dr. Takagi, the ambassador acknowledged, then turned to Krosoth. Commander, I am Thomas Wilson, Earth's designated diplomatic representative. I understand we have you to thank for proposing this more civilized approach to first contact. Krosoth, still struggling to process the unexpected turn of events, managed a formal bow. The Empire values tradition and honor. Ambassador Wilson, the Kavlith Protocol has served as an alternative to full-scale conflict for 17 generations. A wise tradition, Wilson agreed, and one that has given us the opportunity to meet as equals rather than adversaries. Equals. The word stung Krosoth's pride, but he could not deny the outcome of the combat. Rules were rules. Traditions were traditions, the very foundations upon which the Empire was built. Perhaps, he suggested, we should continue our discussions aboard my vessel. The facilities are more conducive to extended negotiations. Wilson glanced at Dr. Takagi, who gave a subtle nod. We would be honored, Commander, though we've taken the liberty of bringing some refreshments from Earth, a customary exchange in our diplomatic traditions. One of the human aides stepped forward, carrying a container that emitted a complex array of aromas. Krosoth's chemical sensors identified proteins, carbohydrates, and various plant extracts, food, presumably. We understand your biochemistry differs from ours, Wilson continued, but our scientists have analyzed the environmental data your ship has been broadcasting. We believe these items should be safe for Vazrathi consumption, though, of course, your medical staff should verify. Krosoth was taken aback by this gesture. The humans had managed to analyze Vazrathi biochemistry from environmental data alone? Their technological capabilities might be more advanced than the Empire had estimated. A thoughtful offering, he acknowledged. My science officer will examine them before consumption. Of course, Wilson agreed readily. Safety first. We've also included information packets about Earth's various cultures, governmental structures, and scientific achievements. We believe open information exchange is the foundation of productive diplomatic relations. While the formal introductions continued, Krosoth noticed Staff Sergeant Murphy slipping away toward the human vessel, apparently forgotten in the diplomatic proceedings. The warrior, if one could call him that, had accomplished something unprecedented, yet seemed utterly unconcerned with the historical significance of his victory. Your champion, Krosoth said quietly to Dr. Takagi. He leaves without ceremony? She glanced at Murphy's retreating form and smiled slightly. Staff Sergeant Murphy has fulfilled his role admirably. He's earned his rest. He defeated our greatest warrior while impaired. Is this typical of human combat capability? Dr. Takagi considered the question carefully. Not typical. No. But perhaps representative of a certain human quality that might be difficult for your people to understand. Explain. We call it adaptability, or sometimes just luck. Humans thrive in chaos. Commander, we improvise. We make mistakes. We stumble forward. And somehow, we survive. Murphy wasn't the strongest warrior we could have sent, but in a strange way, he might have been the most quintessentially human. Krosoth's inner eyelids flickered as he processed this concept. The Supreme Council will find this difficult to accept. I imagine they will, she agreed. But consider the alternative perspective. If one intoxicated Marine could survive combat with your Grand Executor, what might a coordinated military response have looked like? The implication chilled Krosoth's blood. If this was humanity, at its most vulnerable and chaotic, What were they capable of when organized and prepared? Perhaps the Kavlith Protocol had saved the Empire from a costly miscalculation. A provocative thought. Dr. Yumi Takagi, he acknowledged. One that will require significant consideration. Several hours later, aboard the Relentless Dominion, a peculiar scene unfolded in the ship's medical bay. Grand Executor Gilarax, patched up but still bearing the marks of combat, sat across from Staff Sergeant Murphy, who had been invited aboard as a gesture of goodwill, and, Krosoth privately admitted, curiosity. The human appeared much recovered from his earlier condition, though he regarded the Vazrathi medical technology with open wariness. Between them sat a small selection of earth foods and beverages, part of the diplomatic exchange. "So this is coffee," Gilarax rumbled, examining the dark liquid in a container, specially designed to accommodate Vazrathi physiology. "The substance that disabled 3 of our stealth cruisers." Murphy raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't coffee in my flask. Big guy. Vodka and energy drink. Get you through the night shift when you're pulling double duty. Intoxicant combined with stimulant," Krosoth noted from his observation position. "Counterproductive, surely." Murphy shrugged. "Marine Corps secret weapon. Keeps you awake enough to know you're making bad decisions." Gilarax cautiously sampled the coffee, his expression shifting through several unreadable states before settling on something approximating curiosity. Bitter, astringent, yet stimulating. "Wait till you try this," Murphy offered, pushing forward a small container labeled hot sauce. "Goes great with those protein cubes your doc says you can eat." From the diplomatic chamber, several decks above, Ambassador Wilson's voice came through Krosoth's communication implant. "Commander, I believe we've made excellent progress today. Your Council's concerns about territorial boundaries seem quite reasonable, and I believe we can establish protocols that respect both our sovereignties." "The Council will be pleased to hear it, Ambassador," Krosoth replied, his attention split between the diplomatic proceedings and the bizarre cultural exchange happening in the medical bay. Gilarax had just experienced his first encounter with hot sauce and was exhibiting a physiological response that Krosoth had never witnessed before. His bioluminescent patterns were cycling rapidly through colors, settling on a bright orange that typically indicated either extreme danger or extreme pleasure. "This sensation," the warrior gasped, reaching for more of the sauce. "It is like combat, but in one's mouth." Murphy grinned. "Told you. We've got a saying. Pain is weakness leaving the body. Sometimes that includes taste buds." "Your species deliberately consumes irritants for pleasure?" Krosoth asked, fascinated despite himself. "Sure. Life's boring otherwise. Gotta find your thrills where you can, right?" In the diplomatic chamber, Ambassador Wilson was outlining a proposal for cultural exchange programs. "We believe that understanding precedes cooperation, Commander. Perhaps a delegation of Vazrathi scholars could visit Earth's academic institutions, while human scientists study your technological achievements." "An intriguing proposal," Krosoth acknowledged, "though the Council may have security concerns." "Understandable," Wilson agreed. "We can establish parameters that address those concerns while still promoting meaningful exchange." Back in the medical bay, Murphy was attempting to teach Gilarax a human ritual that he called the electric slide, a series of coordinated movements that appeared to have no combat application whatsoever. To Krosoth's astonishment, the Grand Executor was participating with apparent enthusiasm. "Step right, step left, back it up," Murphy instructed, demonstrating the movements. "There you go, you're getting it." Gilarax, a being engineered for maximum combat efficiency over 17 generations, was now shuffling sideways in precise imitation of the human's movements, his massive tail swaying in counterbalance. "This is a warrior ritual?" Krosoth asked skeptically. "Nah, it's a party thing," Murphy explained between steps. "But You'd be surprised how many Marine Corps functions end up with everyone doing this. Builds unit cohesion or something. In that moment, watching the Empire's greatest warrior engaging in synchronized rhythmic movement with a human he had been trying to kill hours earlier, Krosoth experienced a revelation. The humans weren't just unpredictable. They were adaptive in ways the Vazrathi had never considered. They found strength in chaos, cohesion in apparent disorder, and now, impossibly, common ground through what appeared to be completely pointless physical activity. Commander, Ambassador Wilson's voice interrupted his thoughts. I've just received word from Earth. Our leadership is prepared to formalize our agreement with a ceremonial event, perhaps in one of your cycles' time. This would allow both sides to prepare appropriately. Yes, Krosoth agreed, his mind still processing the implications of what he was witnessing. That would be acceptable. The Council will want time to adjust their perspective on human capabilities. Excellent. And might I suggest that Staff Sergeant Murphy be invited to the ceremony? His unique contribution to our peaceful first contact deserves recognition. Krosoth watched as Murphy attempted to explain the concept of high fives to Gilarax, whose massive clawed hands made the ritual somewhat hazardous. I believe that would be appropriate, Ambassador, though perhaps with less intoxicants involved. Wilson chuckled. Agreed, Commander. We'll ensure he's at his professional best for the formal ceremony. As the diplomatic discussions concluded for the day, Krosoth made his way to the medical bay. Gilarax and Murphy were now seated again, engaged in animated conversation despite the translation matrix's occasional struggles with Murphy's colloquialisms. So then the drill instructor says, I don't care if your grandmother died. Private. That doesn't explain why you're wearing her underwear on your head, Murphy finished, slapping his knee. Gilarax produced that grinding sound again. Vazrathi laughter, though it seemed more genuine than Krosoth had ever heard from the warrior. Your training methods are unorthodox. That's one word for it, Murphy agreed. Grand Executor, Krosoth interrupted. How are your injuries? Gilarax straightened, some of his formal demeanor returning. Minor, Commander. The human's victory was unconventional but undeniable. Yeah, about that, Murphy said, rubbing the back of his neck. I feel like I should come clean. I wasn't actually supposed to be your opponent. I was just there to stall until the real diplomats showed up. Stall? Gilarax repeated, his bioluminescent patterns shifting to a confused yellow. Yeah, buy time. My commanding officer said, Murphy, go down there and try not to die for 12 hours. Mission accomplished, I guess. Krosoth and Gilarax exchanged glances. You were not their chosen champion? Krosoth asked carefully. Me? No way. I'm just a regular grunt. They probably would have sent someone from Special Forces if they were serious about a fight. Murphy seemed completely unaware of the implications of his casual admission. But hey, it all worked out, right? No war, nobody died, and your guy here makes a mean high five. Ow, still stings, by the way. Krosoth felt his world shift subtly on its axis. If this regular grunt could survive combat with Gilarax, what would a true human warrior be capable of? The Vazrathi Empire had perhaps narrowly avoided a catastrophic miscalculation. Staff Sergeant Murphy, Krosoth said formally. The Empire acknowledges your unique contribution to peaceful relations between our species. When I report to the Supreme Council, I will recommend that you be recognized with the Order of Calculated Chaos, a rarely bestowed honor for those whose unconventional methods achieve significant outcomes. Murphy blinked in surprise. Thanks. I mean, I appreciate it, but I really didn't do anything special. That, Gilarax rumbled, is perhaps the most concerning statement you have made yet. Human. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth to begin preparations for the formal ceremony, Krosoth escorted Ambassador Wilson and Dr. Takagi to the shuttle bay. Staff Sergeant Murphy had already boarded, having been given a small container of hot sauce by Gilarax as a token of warrior respect. "Ambassador," Krosoth said as they walked, "I believe it would be beneficial for Staff Sergeant Murphy to participate in an exchange program with our warrior caste. Perhaps a training cycle, what you might call 12 weeks, aboard one of our military vessels." Wilson raised an eyebrow. "An interesting proposal, Commander. May I ask why?" "Cultural exchange," Krosoth replied smoothly. "And perhaps to contextualize today's events for our military leadership." Dr. Takagi suppressed what appeared to be a smile. "You want to figure out if all Marines are like Murphy, or if he's a special case. I would phrase it differently, but essentially, yes. The Supreme Council will have questions about human combat capabilities that I cannot currently answer. I'll forward your request to the appropriate authorities," Wilson promised. "Though I should warn you, 12 weeks with Staff Sergeant Murphy might be more cultural exchange than you're prepared for. The Empire has faced many challenges in its history. Ambassador, we are adaptable." As the human shuttle departed, Krosoth returned to the bridge of the Relentless Dominion, where Lieutenant Krav awaited his orders. "Set course for the homeworld. Lieutenant, priority communication channel to the Supreme Council." "Yes, Commander. And the mission report?" Krosoth considered the question carefully. How does one explain to the Supreme Council that their entire perception of humanity was fundamentally flawed? That the Empire's expansion plans might need to be reconsidered, not because humans were too strong, but because they were too unpredictable. "I will prepare the report personally. Lieutenant, it will require careful phrasing." "As you wish, Commander." Krav hesitated, then added, "The crew is curious about the outcome of the Kavlith Protocol. There are rumors that the human victory was unusual, that their champion employed tactics unknown to our combat traditions." Krosoth's crest flattened in thought. "Tell the crew this, Lieutenant. The Empire has encountered a species unlike any in our records. They find strength in chaos, victory in improvisation, and apparently, diplomatic solutions in hot sauce and synchronized movement rituals." "Sir?" Krav's confusion was evident. "They will understand in time, Lieutenant, as will the Council." Krosoth gazed at the image of Earth, growing smaller on the view screen as the ship prepared for departure. Perhaps what the Empire needs is not more order, but a carefully calculated measure of chaos. As the Relentless Dominion accelerated away from Earth, Krosoth imagined Staff Sergeant Murphy attempting to teach the electric slide to the Supreme Council. The mental image was so absurd that he nearly produced that grinding laughter himself. 17 generations of tradition and protocol had brought the Vazrathi Empire to dominance across 9 star systems. But perhaps, Krosoth reflected, the next generation would need to learn something new, something uniquely human, to continue that expansion. Adaptability, unpredictability, and maybe, just maybe, the proper application of coffee and hot sauce. The future, suddenly, seemed far less orderly and far more interesting than Krosoth had ever imagined.